The glamorous, polished facade of Forrester Creations has always been a masterful illusion, a glittering shield, designed to conceal the decaying core of secrets, betrayals, and shattered hearts that lie beneath the surface. For Steffy Forrester Finnegan, maintaining this illusion has become a matter of sheer survival. Her life, once a portrait of hard-won domestic bliss and unparalleled corporate triumph, has rapidly deteriorated into a masterpiece of private, suffocating agony. The trauma of the recent past has finally caught up with her, and the consequences of a single, desperate night are about to unleash a catastrophic storm that could permanently destroy the Forrester empire and obliterate her family. The catastrophic chain of events began on the sun-drenched shores of the French Riviera. The Monaco trip was desperately intended to be a romantic reset for the fractured sin marriage, a chance for Steffy and John Finnegan to escape the relentless corporate warfare in Los Angeles and the suffocating, ever-present threat of Sheila Carter. Instead, the picturesque European getaway transformed into a psychological battleground. When Steffy discovered that Finn had secretly allowed Sheila onto his commercial flight and caught the psychotic predator stalking them in Monaco, her fragile sense of safety shattered into a million jagged pieces. Finn's momentary hesitation, his slight, misguided defense of his biological mother, was the ultimate, unforgivable betrayal in Steffy's eyes. Fueled by blinding tears, profound trauma, and the burning sting of betrayal, Steffy threw her wedding ring at her husband and fled back to Los Angeles. She sought refuge in the only place that had ever offered her a sense of absolute control, the sprawling, silent CEO office at Forrester Creations. But she was not alone in her misery. The universe, in its infinite and cruel irony, orchestrated a fateful collision of broken hearts. Carter Walton, the loyal chief operating officer, was already there, drowning in an ocean of his own devastating grief. Daphne Rose Walton, the woman he loved with all his heart, had just fled to Paris, completely paralyzed by a severe infertility diagnosis and the heartbreaking belief that she was denying Carter his lifelong dream of a family. Grief and alcohol are a lethal, intoxicating combination. In the darkened shadows of the executive office, the heavy silence was broken only by the clinking of bourbon glasses and the shared, desperate sobs of two people whose lives had completely imploded. The boundaries of their long-standing friendship and their strict professional decorum simply evaporated in the haze of their mutual devastation. The passionate, steamy affair between the CEO and the coup was not born out of malicious intent or premeditated lust. It was born out of a desperate, primal need to feel something other than profound, suffocating pain. They crossed the ultimate line, seeking a fleeting moment of comfort in the wreckage of their respective marriages. The morning after brought the harsh, blinding light of reality and a tidal wave of crushing regret. Steffy and Carter, both fiercely loyal to their spouses despite the current fractures, forged a desperate, unbreakable pact of silence. They swore to bury their transgression beneath layers of corporate duty and marital obligations, desperately convincing themselves that they could lock that fateful night away forever. They believed that if they never spoke of it again, the universe would simply allow them to move on. But the universe is rarely self-forgiving, especially to those who carry the heavy name of Forrester. Finn's frantic, desperate return from Monaco only served to complicate the tangled web of deceit. Consumed by an agonizing guilt for hiding Sheila's presence and terrifyingly aware of how close he came to losing the love of his life, Finn dropped to his knees. He begged for Steffy's forgiveness with a raw, bleeding vulnerability that would have moved the coldest of hearts. He promised absolute, unwavering loyalty, vowing to banish Sheila Carter from their lives permanently and prioritizing Steffy and their children above all else. Steffy, desperate to salvage her family and desperately wanting to believe in the man she loved, accepted her husband's impassioned pleas. But her forgiveness was a hollow, fragile shield carefully constructed to mask her own monumental betrayal. She welcomed Finn back into her arms, into their home, and into their bed, desperately trying to erase the lingering memory of Carter's touch. She painted on a brave smile, pretending that their Monaco nightmare was firmly in the rearview mirror, while the psychological torment of living a lie began to slowly eat away at her soul. Weeks turned into a blur of corporate damage control and marital rebuilding. The Forrester family was under siege, navigating the apocalyptic public relations nightmare of Hope Logan's defection to a rival fashion house and Will Spencer's violent assault on Eric Forrester. Steffi threw herself into her work, using the chaos of the fashion industry as a distraction from her internal guilt. But the human body is a terrible keeper of secrets. The physical symptoms became impossible to ignore. The sudden, overwhelming dizzy spells that forced her to grip the edge of her desk, the profound, bone-weary fatigue that no amount of espresso could cure, and the unmistakable, lingering nausea that sent her rushing to her private bathroom. Operating under a cloak of absolute secrecy, Steffi scheduled a clandestine appointment with a trusted, private physician, terrified of what the examination might reveal. As she lay on the sterile examination table, the cold ultrasound wand gliding across her abdomen, she braced herself for the news of a pregnancy. She mentally prepared herself for the daunting task of determining a timeline. But the doctor's words shattered her fragile reality into a million jagged, irreparable pieces. There was not one rhythmic heartbeat echoing from the monitor in the quiet room, but two. Steffi Forrester Finnegan was pregnant with twins. For a fleeting, microscopic fraction of a second, the innate, overwhelming maternal joy of bringing new life into the world washed over her. But that beautiful, pure emotion was instantly and violently suffocated by a tidal wave of sheer, unadulterated terror. The timing of the conception was a catastrophic, unsolvable puzzle. The medical professionals, reviewing her charts and the ultrasound measurements, were completely baffled by the exact conception timeline. The window of conception was incredibly narrow, placing the miraculous event directly in the epicenter of Steffi's darkest, most chaotic week. The time frame perfectly, terrifyingly overlapped with both her passionate, mistaken night with Carter Walton and her subsequent, emotional reconciliation with her husband, John Finnegan. The biological impossibility of determining the father without a highly invasive and potentially risky DNA test has plunged Steffi into a psychological hellscape unlike anything she has ever experienced. She is trapped in a waking nightmare, staring at the ceiling in the dead of night, her mind spinning with horrifying questions. Is she carrying the children of her devoted husband, the man who is currently moving heaven and earth to heal their fractured family? Or is she carrying the biological children of her trusted friend, her chief operating officer, and the husband of her dear friend Daphne? This cruel twist of fate is magnified 1,000-fold by the tragic irony of Carter's situation. Daphne Rose Walton had recently returned from Paris, realizing that running away was not the answer to her severe infertility diagnosis. She and Carter were currently navigating the heartbreaking, emotionally draining process of exploring alternative paths to parenthood, desperately clinging to the hope of building a family together. If Carter Walton were to discover that he had accidentally impregnated Steffi Forrester with twins while his own wife was weeping over her inability to conceive, the revelation would completely destroy his noble heart and obliterate his marriage to Daphne forever. The sheer, devastating cruelty of this potential reality makes Steffi physically ill. The stakes of this paternity mystery are astronomically high, extending far beyond the walls of the Cliff House and threatening to bring the entire Forrester empire crashing down. Ridge Forrester is currently operating on a volatile hair trigger, consumed by a volcanic paternal rage and an all-out corporate war against the Spencer family. Ridge has already unleashed his blistering fury upon Finn for failing to protect Steffi in Monaco, proving that his protective instincts regarding his daughter are absolute and uncompromising. If the Forrester patriarch were to discover that his trusted could cross the ultimate line with his beloved CEO daughter, the fallout would be nothing short of apocalyptic. Ridge's wrath would be a force of nature. He would view Carter's actions as the ultimate betrayal of trust, a desecration of the Forrester legacy. He would undoubtedly fire Carter on the spot, potentially blacklisting him from the fashion industry entirely. And the ensuing scandal would provide Logan Creations with the ultimate ammunition to destroy Forrester Creations' reputation forever. The scandal of a CEO and co affair resulting in a twin pregnancy would be a public relations nightmare that even the most seasoned spin doctors could never contain. The media frenzy would eclipse Hope's defection, turning the Forrester family into a global laughingstock. Furthermore, the revelation would utterly and permanently obliterate John Finnegan. Finn is a man who has sacrificed everything to prove his devotion to Steffy. He is currently walking a tightrope, desperately trying to keep his manipulative biological mother, Sheila Carter, at bay while simultaneously trying to rebuild the foundation of trust in his marriage. The realization that his wife, the woman he views as his entire world, sought comfort in another man's arms and conceived twins during their brief separation would shatter his noble heart into dust. Finn has forgiven Steffy for past transgressions, but a betrayal of this magnitude, compounded by a secret twin pregnancy, would surely be the final, fatal blow to the sin marriage. Finn's profound disappointment would be a fate far worse than death for Steffy. She watches him every single day, completely oblivious to the ticking time bomb growing rapidly inside her womb. Finn is stepping up in every conceivable way, trying to be the perfect husband, the perfect father to Hayes and Kelly, trying desperately to heal the lingering wounds of their Monaco disaster. He brings her herbal tea to soothe her nausea, attributing her fatigue to the stress of the corporate war. He is gentle, attentive, and overwhelmingly loving. The true, visceral horror of Steffy's existence manifests in the quiet, intimate moments at the Cliff House. When Finn lovingly reaches out to touch her slightly rounding belly, his eyes shining with pure, unadulterated joy as he whispers sweet promises to their unborn children, Steffy is paralyzed by a suffocating, agonizing guilt. Every gentle caress from her husband feels like a burning brand upon her skin. She is forced to live in a constant state of agonizing torment, forcing bright, convincing smiles through her, and tears as Finn dreams aloud of their expanded family, of nursery colors and future family vacations. The psychological weight of her massive deception is slowly, methodically crushing the life out of her. Steffy's mind races with horrifying, inescapable scenarios. What if the babies are born with Carter's distinct features? What if a medical emergency during the pregnancy or birth requires a blood transfusion that inadvertently exposes the biological truth to the entire hospital staff? The paranoia is absolute, seeping into her every waking thought and haunting her fitful nightmares. She finds herself avoiding Carter at the office, unable to meet his gaze during executive board meetings, terrified that her eyes will betray the monumental secret she is carrying. Carter, sensing the shift in her demeanor, assumes she is simply consumed by the stress of the Logan rivalry, completely unaware that he might be the father of the heirs to the Forrester dynasty. And then there is the ever-present, malevolent threat of Sheila Carter. Sheila is a cunning predator who thrives on the weaknesses, vulnerabilities, and secrets of others. She is currently lurking in the shadows, desperately looking for any leverage to force her way back into Finn and Hayes' lives. If Sheila were to catch even a whisper of Steffy's paternity nightmare, she would weaponize the unborn twins without a second thought. Sheila would use the scandal to destroy Steffy's reputation, alienate her from Finn, and position herself as the only loyal family Finn has left. Steffy knows that showing any sign of weakness is an invitation for Sheila to strike, which only amplifies her crippling anxiety. Steffy Forrester Finnegan is trapped in a gilded cage of her own making, surrounded by enemies on the outside and consumed by a devastating secret on the inside. The walls are rapidly closing in, and the truth is a relentless, unstoppable force of nature that cannot be buried forever. A twin pregnancy cannot be hidden, and the eventual need for genetic testing is a looming executioner's axe hanging over her head. As the twins grow stronger within her, so does the inevitable, explosive reckoning that will shatter the bold and the beautiful universe. The countdown to catastrophe has officially begun. Steffi must navigate this treacherous, impossible minefield, desperately trying to balance the fate of her fragile marriage, the stability of the crumbling Forrester empire, and the innocent lives of her unborn children. One wrong move, one slipped secret, one suspicious glance from a doctor, and her entire world will burn to ashes. The glamorous Zio is fighting the battle of her life, and this time, there may be no miraculous rescue, no corporate buyout, and no forgiveness that can save her from the devastating consequences of the truth.